All right, welcome to Gun Owners Radio. We make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for listening to Gun Owners Radio. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Go to our website, join our newsletter, and tell your friends. That's gunownersradio.com. Check us out.
All right, Gun Owners Radio's new home is here at Discount Gun Mart. DGM has given us a space to make a permanent studio for Gun Owners Radio. As a way to say thanks, please check out DGM's location both in San Diego on Marina, as well as in Santee over by Gillespie Field off the 67. Just go to discountgunmart.com for more info.
Think you, DGM. Appreciate you guys giving us a home, and we're very grateful to be here. And I'm really excited about the new podcast. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fires in LA. But I don't want to just talk about the obvious. I'm hearing everybody out there who's a gun advocate talk about how, see, there's looters. And you're right. You're absolutely right. But I don't want to parrot that. We all know that. I wanted to go a little bit deeper and get a little bit more complex, a little bit more sophisticated on it. The fires in LA. Of course, we're all truly sorry for the victims. I mean, it's sad, it's tragic, it's horrible. I'm sure that the loss of property that those folks are feeling is unbearably horrible. And the loss of life, which there has been, is absolutely unbearably horrible. And I truly, hearts go out to them, and I'm so sorry for what they're going through. Just going through that kind of thing, I'm just so sorry for everyone. So it's been talked about to death. We all know that the hydrants weren't full and the mayor was on a trip. We all know all that stuff. One reporter even got criticized. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he was criticized for, he was wearing a yellow fireman's jacket. And so he'd look better on TV. He actually cinched the back of it so it was a little bit more form-fitting. So, I mean, we've all heard these criticisms, over and over and over again. But this is what I think I can add. Being the organization we are, the political organization, we only focus on Second Amendment, but we're still at the heart and foundation of a political organization. First, why are people being flippant or cold towards the victims just because they're in LA? Well, that's easier to understand than most people probably think, and I wanted to talk about it. In the last few years, we've seen a number of disasters. Fires in Maui, the hurricanes in North Carolina. We've seen a number of things. But the coverage of those catastrophes, not handled like the coverage in LA. Specifically, we're seeing story after story, and interview after interview by famous actors and their feelings on the matter and that sort of thing. The actors are criticizing the local and state government for everything and, that went wrong. I'm seeing quotes from these actors that we're used to seeing on TV and movies, and they're criticizing their local government, their mayor, their governor about what went wrong. It makes them look completely out of touch. When something horrible and horrific happens in Maui, when something horrible and horrific happens in North Carolina, and nobody really cares. Maybe there are a minor coverage or whatever, but the other part of it is the rest of the country is sitting back and looking and going, hey, wait a minute, these are the political leaders, and they have the political philosophy that you keep telling us is the right way, is the moral way. And now, when something actually does happen, when you need leadership, you're standing up and criticizing and wanting to be the center of attention. In Maui, you didn't see them quoting, Kimo Aliamanu over and over and plastering his story all over social media. You didn't see that. You didn't see, in North Carolina, you didn't see them interviewing, Bubba Wilson about how horrible it is that he lost his entire life because of this hurricane, that he has no insurance, he has no savings account, and now he has no job. Why? Because, and those, of course, are names I just made up, but neither one of those people are people that we've seen on TV or people that we've seen on the movies. And that difference is, it's something that people pick up on. It's something that people can't relate to. It's something that marginalizes people. It's something that makes the general public go, hey, wait a minute, what about me? especially when, like I said, these people for the last 2 years have been telling half the country that the person they want to vote for is the equivalent of a horrible dictator, and that they're immoral for wanting, the government that'll actually, number one, be competent. So that's number one. But let's talk about the actual government. I think this is something where we can actually add to the conversation because this really is our area of expertise. We're a political organization first, like I said. We concentrate on the Second Amendment, but we're political. So let's talk about the actual politics. There's been a trend in the last, I'm going to say 10 years or so, that's been increasing and getting worse and worse. People are running for city council and suddenly under the impression that they're somehow on a world stage. They're weighing in on foreign wars and they're weighing in on these cultural issues or social issues that a city council has nothing to do with. The city council, as we know it, is actually a very American invention. They actually came out in the late 1800s, and they really started to take off in the early 1900s. The reason for a city council was a town would form around some kind of central economic driver, especially in the West. It was usually formed around something like a mine. They were mining some kind of gold or some kind of other product or whatever, or a factory or a port or a river or something. And what they now needed is support for that business, right? So they have, say, a mine, right? And you have, well, the miners need to live somewhere and the miners need to shop somewhere. So then, boom, this little mini economy would pop up. Well, in order to get to that economy, you need certain things. You need some kind of infrastructure. And because we're the government of the self-governed, we're the country of the self-governed in the United States, the first time that's ever been tried in human history. They had to figure it out. They didn't have a king that could swoop in and say, hey, I'm going to decree that this has to happen. No, they had to figure it out. So they got together, because they needed, what do they need? They need roads, right? Because you got to get to and from these businesses. They needed protection, some kind of law enforcement. They needed medical. They needed their garbage removed, and they needed their clean water delivered. And they needed fires to be put out. Those are the basic needs. If you go to some small town, Tombstone, Arizona, and look back at what do they need after they have this economic center, what do they need? Well, that's what they need. And that's the entire point of a city council. That is their job. And it's not negotiable. They don't get to decide what their job is next year, and that it's different next year than it was. And that's exactly still why they exist. A lot of city councils are speaking up and they're making statements. And listen, I'm all for standing up for the marginalized. I'm 100% in favor of giving a voice to those who simply don't have one. In fact, that's a big part of my job. But not until after the real functions of city councils are handled. Potholes in roads, emergency services like cops and firefighters, water, garbage collection. That's the measure of success. That's a city council's job. Once those are completely run flawlessly and there's still time left on your schedule, then by all means, city council members, make a statement about the marginalized. But if you run out of water and your house is burned down and you had to flee because nobody was there to help you and direct you, nobody cares about the marginalized, including the marginalized. If the marginalized are losing their house because the city council isn't doing their job, then even the marginalized don't care about the marginalized. In fact, the fundamental service that a city council is responsible helps citizens, helps the marginalized far more than the rich. The rich don't need that help as much as the marginalized. So what I'm saying is you'll see these non-binding resolutions where they give these opinions or they have so-and-so or such and such day, or they give all this funding to a group that supports some other, some other marginalized community, whatever it is, whatever it's based on, whatever it's based on. But then you can't deliver water. You can't fund your fire department. You can't fill potholes. Then nothing else matters. And oh, by the way, those same marginalized groups are the ones that are suffering. They're the ones that are suffering. So when we pick people, we pick people based on Second Amendment. That's our litmus test. That's our first litmus test. But one of the things I'm very proud about when it comes to San Diego County gun owners and Orange County gun owners and Inland Empire gun owners is we also look at the content of their character. We look at are they capable of doing the job? Are they proficient and good at doing the job? We're looking at electing or hiring, in effect, is what you're doing, more competent people. So, cities like LA, like all the different cities in LA, they'd pass these non-binding resolutions about Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine. It has absolutely nothing to do with their city government. Absolutely nothing to do with their city government. Meanwhile, their reservoirs were empty, their hydrants were empty, their firefighters, at least the leadership in the firefighter department, was inept. And that's not me saying they're inept. She's been fired. The mayor fired her right in the middle of this catastrophe. So, the issue of diversity has become a really hot issue lately. And it really occurred to me how the two sides see the issue clearly when I was watching an interview it was actually an interview of Elon Musk by Don Lemon. Don Lemon used to work for CNN. Pretty biased reporter. He got fired by CNN because of the way he treats people. I'm not going to get into all that, but he basically got let go from CNN. He made his way over to Twitter or X, and then one of his big first interviews was Elon Musk. Elon Musk and Don Lemon disagree with each other on most things, but I wanted to show a conversation about DEI, and I wanted to talk about how the two sides, let's call it the pro-DEI and the anti-DEI sides, they see the issue completely different. They talk past each other. So let's go ahead and show that clip.
Okay, so listen, let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, that's been a target of yours lately on X. There was a repost of Ben Shapiro that you claim that DEI is killing people. Specifically, you point to medicine. You claim that DEI programs are putting people at risk. Do you really believe this to be true? And what evidence do you have to support it?
What I was referring to there was that if we lower the standards for doctors, such so that they, if the test for a doctor is lowered, then the probability of them making a mistake and killing someone is obviously going to be higher.
Wait, say that again. I'm not sure I understand what you said. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yes, if the standards for passing medical exams and becoming a doctor, or especially something like a surgeon, if the standards are lowered, then the probability that the surgeon will make a mistake is higher. They're making mistakes in their exam. They may make mistakes with people, and that may result in people dying.
What evidence do you have, though, that they're lowering the standards? There's no evidence of that.
I believe there is.
There's no evidence of that, Elon. What is the evidence?
I believe they have literally lowered the standards at Duke University, and that is what the article was referring to.
There's no
evidence.
evidence
They have
of that.
not lowered the standards?
There's no evidence about lowering standards, and I think that there is...
I believe that is a false statement you're making.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out.
If the standards are lowered, okay, now I don't care where you stand on Don Lemon. I don't really particularly like the guy. Doesn't matter where you stand on Elon Musk, and it doesn't even really matter where you stand on DEI. That's not the point of this conversation. If the standards are lowered, the point of this conversation is that you have two people who are well-versed in the subject, and they're talking past each other. They're trying to, I don't understand, what you're saying, Elon Musk, and he doesn't understand why it's not clear to him what he's saying. So Don Lemon went on to say that there are already black and brown pilots and doctors, and Elon Musk looked confused. So Elon Musk is saying, hey, if we do this DEI thing, you're lowering the standards. Excuse me. So here's the disconnect. Those against the idea of putting an emphasis on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, usually those folks are on the political right. They think that if someone is the best for the job, they'll get the job, regardless of heritage, skin color, et cetera, et cetera.
So is this the litmus test to see if we're right, left, or center?
Because
Because I know where I stand right now.
In some ways, well, those who are supportive of DEI, usually those on the political left, just think that if someone is qualified, they should get the job. And the difference lies in the difference between those two words, best and qualified. So those, that are pro-DEI, They think, hey, if they've taken the classes, they've gotten the training, then everybody in this pool is equally qualified. Everybody in this pool of candidates for a job is equally qualified. Where if you're against the idea of DEI, you tend to look at it as, hey, there is a best and a second best and a third best and a fourth best. And what's interesting about that is folks on the right tend to be more individualistic. Folks on the left tend to be more collective. And that's exactly how they're looking at this DEI. So he's saying, look, I don't want to lower the standards. And Don's going, wait a minute, just by hiring someone who's black or brown is lowering the standards, as if that's what is meant by his lowering the standards. It's just the fact they're black or brown. It's not what he's saying. He's saying, hey, look, they're hiring the best people for the job. They have 10 openings. They're going to hire the 10 best people for this job. And it doesn't matter if they're black, white, or whatever. So if in the top 10, if in the top 10, somebody, of those 10 are not black or brown, well, then they got to go, well, then we got to go to the 11th best, the 12th best, the 13th best, or whoever. Because otherwise, they'd be in that top 10%. It has nothing to do with their skin color. It has nothing to do with their heritage. So that's the disconnect. They're looking and they're saying, hey, look, we need a fire chief in L.A.? Okay, well, we got like 50 people that could be the chief. All of them are equally as good. So let's pick the one that fills some boxes. Let's give somebody else a chance. Kind of the undertone of that is that they aren't given a chance because of their gender, their sexuality, their whatever it is, their heritage. But the reality is there's somebody who is best for that job. And that's who the non-DEI folks want picked for that job. And I think that these fires in LA clearly illustrated that. It's clear that the best person was not picked to be the chief of the fire department. And that's not just me talking. That's the actual mayor of LA who fired her. And I think that's the disconnect. That's why people are kind of talking past each other. That's why when you say, I just want the best person for the job, and the other side is saying, well, you're just a bigot or a racist or whatever. You're mean. You're a horrible person. So the right sees the job pool as a contest. There is the best of the job, and then it goes down from there. The left sees everyone in there as equally qualified. Hey, they've done the classes, they've done the certifications, so they're all equally qualified. The pilot that crashes 3 times in the simulator, but, we'll pass him, her, whatever anyway. The doctor that failed their exams, but let's give them a medical degree and show how supportive we are. It's truly a difference in philosophy. And know that it's a great way to explain this to people. When you're sitting down talking to people, explaining to them that, hey, you know what? Everyone's not equally qualified even though they've had the same training. Rather than explain to them or get into an argument or whatever, explain to them, hey, you know what? I want the best person for the job. And here's what I mean by the best person, the person that can do the job, that can execute the job perfectly. And I don't care what that means. I love the idea that government is sticking up for the vulnerable and the marginalized. I really, truly do. And again, I think that's a big part of what I do is I give gun owners, people want to defend themselves. I give them a voice. San Diego County Gun Owners is that voice. But not until after they do that job. And their job is not to expand DEI. It's to make sure that they do the basic functions of government. And that's something I really wanted to emphasize on these fires. What do you guys think? Any thoughts, Gary?
I agree with you
Right?
that the left thinks in a collectivist way and the right thinks in an individualist way. It is a philosophy of government in California, and it's kind of unusual for people in other states to look at our state and think that gun owners are a marginalized class.
Yeah.
And that's probably something that people in other states are just astonished at. Mm-hmm. Certainly my friends in other states are astonished at the heavy hand of the state that leans on gun owners in every facet of their life: possession, purchase, carry.
I got to tell you, you're one of the few that understands it, or probably better understands it than most people in San Diego, because you defend those marginalized people.
I do, many of them.
The people who are targeted by the law because they're gun owners, who are doing something that's normal in the rest of the country, you're one of the people that defends them. You know, and again, what do you do with this information? You know, I think a lot of people are going to walk away and they're going to go from this LA situation and they're going to say, hey, you know, this is why you need a gun in case there are rioters or looters. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be convinced by that. I do think people can be convinced who don't agree with you on the idea that, hey, we need competent government. Because even folks on their side right now are saying, yeah, okay, we need competent government. You know, I'm all for DEI, but, you know, I'm even more marginalized when my house burns down. So,
You know, like, going back to what you were saying at the beginning too, it's like the importance of understanding when these people, when they run for office, these officials, they run for whatever position they're running for. They gotta keep in mind, they gotta stay in their lane.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, they have a position, they are selected through whatever process to do a particular job. And they might have great grandiose ideas, really great suggestions on how to make other things better, but their focus needs to be what they were hired to do.
Exactly.
And when they expand that, you know, you can only do so many things well. If you try to go too broad and you're outside your lane of what you're supposed to be doing, you're ignoring your job.
yeah, as long as there's a pothole.
And you're diluting out. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as there's a pothole on Claremont Mesa Boulevard,
Right.
I don't care about what your opinion of Israel and Hamas is.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter where you stand on Russia and Ukraine. You know, I don't care what you think about, you know, what we should do with DEI until I know that the fireman is going to show up when my house is burning down and he's going to actually have water and the tools he needs. Anyway, that's my rant. That's the first thing that came across, and I didn't just want to repeat the idea that I completely agree with, you know, that you're your own first responder, so you got to be able to defend yourself when there are looters, but I wanted to go in a different
I
direction.
have a quick question though.
Yes, ma'am.
When did DEI become, when was it formed? When did that begin? Because I personally didn't hear about it until the whole Trump, the assassination attempt and you know, the failure of that. Like when did DEI really become integrated?
A thing.
And used? Yeah.
You know, there's actually a guy I really like a lot named Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, and he's was a professor at NYU, and he's kind of he's done a number of things that I like very much. But one of the things he is doing currently is he's tracking the history of woke. And a part of that is this DEI's kind of been, you know, predates it, but the real modern big push, about 2012, he's kind of narrowed it down to an incident that you can still find on the internet where a bunch of college kids, they said they wanted some people punished because they wore Halloween costumes that were offensive. And this professor's like, what are we doing? Like, what, you know? And he was actually,
Yale.
Was it Yale?
Yeah.
He was actually a fairly left-wing professor. And he's just like, what are you talking? Like, you're adults now. And they sat there in this quad at Yale and berated him and yelled at him and lectured him. And Jonathan Haidt, this professor, this researcher, has kind of said, hey, that's ground zero. That's when this thing really kicked off. So I'd say within the last, 10 years, it's really taken off. So anyway.
Second term of Obama, really, you know, weaponizing first term of Trump.
Okay.
So I think if you're arguing about DEI, I think going the route of competence, you know, and what's going on in government with LA and what happened there, I think it's a better angle than some of the other angles I've seen. So anyway, thank you guys again. Truly, if you can send some money to the folks in LA, great. You know, there are definitely a lot of people in need. There are a lot of first responders that need things. There's a ton of criticism. Gary, you and I were talking before. I think Newsom's career is done as far as moving up to federal.
Well, we're stuck with him for another 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't see any successful recall movement occurring in the next 2 years because it's only 2 years.
Yeah, we already tried that.
But hopefully this drives a stake through the heart of that chameleon's ambitions for president.
Amen. All right. What do you say we do the gun truth of the week?
I do.
All right. Every week I try to bring you a gun truth, something that maybe the media won't talk about when it has to do with gun ownership and Second Amendment. So here's this week's gun truth of the week. Okay, results were published in a piece called Armed and Dangerous, a survey of felons and their firearms. This was done by researchers Wright and Rossi, which kind of sounds like a gun manufacturer in and of itself, right?
Well,
Wright and Rossi.
Rossi is.
Rossi is, right? Wright and
right.
Rossi sounds like an over-under, that I'd buy for $10,000. So Wright and Rossi wrote the Armed and Dangerous, a survey of felons and their firearms. And he showed that about 3/5 or about 56% of felons will, quote, not mess around with a victim he knows is armed with a gun. So if you want to deter at least 56% of criminals, you're going to want to carry a gun. So that's your gun truth of the week. Okay, Q&A. You have Q's, I have A's. Every week people email me questions and I answer them, but then I bring them on the air. And, because I figure if one person has the question, then a lot of people have the question. Question number 1. Will we ever have a gun show in San Diego again? Sounds like yes. Sounds like the folks that put on the gun show in Mission Valley and then in Escondido are coming back in June. We don't have a date yet. We don't have details yet. But Rich has told me that they are looking at coming and doing a gun show in June. So as soon as we know more about that, we'll let you know. CCW is how long? Okay, so the wait for a long time was well over a year. The wait time now, if you put in your application and you supply everything that you're supposed to supply them with, as long as they're not waiting on you, your wait time's down to about 8 months from application to issuance. Is that perfect? Nope, but it's getting a lot better, and it's 8 months. So
That's less than half of what it was not even a year ago.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's good news. And they're still pushing out like 600 a month, which is awesome. CCWs, do I have to list a gun on the application? No, you do not. When you put in an application, there is a section to list, I think it's up to 3 guns. You actually don't have to list any guns. You want to list one, great. But the only time it matters is when you actually go through the class. That's when you need to bring every single gun that you're going to put on your CCW because you have to qualify it. They need to make model, and serial number.
And they added a category to the cert now. There's
and
a
caliber.
Type, there's a type, well, caliber and type. But as far as do you have to list them? No. But the benefit and or reason why you might want to, if you care, and again, you don't have to if you don't want to, is it gives the Sheriff's Department an opportunity to kind of pre-screen your firearms and the link of the registration, make sure there's no errors. Because if there's an issue with your registration, maybe you unknowingly acquired it from dad, didn't know that a transfer was necessary, it's not registered to you, you can't go on your permit. So it gives an opportunity for them to kind of catch those issues for you to fix it in time for it to be able to be put on your permit when it's time.
Exactly right. I had somebody reached out, and they are there is the threat of danger in their life, and they've never touched a gun before. So I got him in touch with an instructor who wants to work with him and bring him from A to Z. I mean, this is someone who really truly has never touched a gun before. And the discussion was, well, hey, I don't even know if I want a CCW. I'll probably get there one day, but it's like, 8 months, you might as well put your application in now. You don't actually own a gun.
Right.
And then see, can you bring yourself up to speed in 8 months? I think a person absolutely can. Oh, yeah. But it's just up to them and how much time they want to spend on it. But I explained to him, I said, you know what? This is a good way to hold yourself accountable. Mm-hmm. Take the classes, get the education, buy the gun. But this person can submit their application, get in the queue, and then, of course, they don't have to own a gun. So. All right, what's next, Alicia?
So up next, we are going to have, finishing up our Q&As.
Q&As.
So up next, this is going to be our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and the legislators. But remember, I'm not a lawyer, neither is Mike. We are not able to give you any legal advice. All legal advice should come from a properly licensed California attorney. Our sponsor, John Dillon, is a lawyer. John has been helping more and more people to fight the good fight with those GVROs, and those are gun violence restraining orders. If you know somebody that's had their self-defense rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is dillonlawgp.com, and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
John's a great guy, and we have the benefit and pleasure of, we've already talked to him. We haven't introduced him yet, but we have an attorney in studio today, Gary Gibson. Gary, who is a criminal defense attorney. Is that the best way to describe you?
Yeah, that's good.
Criminal defense attorney extraordinaire. I got to tell you, man, I can't thank you enough for all the help you've given people. We're going to talk in depth about a number of things going forward, but I'm glad to have you here to talk about the legal update section. So thank you so much for joining us, Gary.
You're welcome.
Okay, first thing is assault weapon ban cases and the Supreme Court. There are 3 cases really hoping to make their way to the Supreme Court. And they're hoping that the Supreme Court grants conference, right? Isn't that the term, Gary?
Well, they've scheduled it for conference. They're hoping they grant certiorari.
Okay.
They're hoping that they agree to hear the case. And they're going to decide whether to agree to hear the Maryland assault weapon ban case, which I believe is called STUMP versus Bianchi.
Yep.
They're going to decide whether they're going to hear that this term later this month. And if they agree to hear it this term, that means that we're going to get an opinion on assault weapons by the 1st of July.
By the 1st of July. We could be just, 6 months away
Correct.
from something we've all hoped for. And there's no way to, there's no way to know. There's so many, we don't know what they're going to do. There's no way to kind of read the tea leaves right now. We could get it. We could not get it. And we have no idea why. It might not be that one. It might be one of the other ones. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard
They might like a better case.
Yeah.
You know, the people that want to vote for an assault weapons ban being unconstitutional, they say, you know, I just don't like the facts of this case. Let's get a different one as the lead on this, so it makes my job easier.
Right. And but there's no, everything from here is total speculation as to whether or not they're going to take it and which one they're going to take and how they're going to rule.
Oh, there's absolutely no idea. If anybody telling you they know what's going to happen, they're not telling you the truth.
They're not telling you the truth.
We have no idea what the internal politics are in the Supreme Court in determining whether they've got enough votes to grant certiorari.
The only thing we do know is if they don't take it, if they don't say, hey, yes, we're going to take this, if we don't hear that by the 25th.
Certainly by the end of January. If we don't hear it by the end of January, they're not taking it.
It's not taking it. Okay. All right. So that's what's going on. This next one is a very interesting case. I really try to pick cases that we can summarize, cases that actually have an impact on you here in California. This is a case out of Ohio. An Ohio judge strikes down a law prohibiting people under indictment for having a gun, or from having a gun. So in other words, if they're under indictment in Ohio, they're not allowed to have a gun. They're basically a prohibited person. The interesting thing about this case is it's one of the cases that use the Heller and Bruin analysis, which is becoming the standard, which is why Bruin was such an important case, and why I've said Bruin isn't the end. Bruin is just a tool, a very powerful tool that we can use to restore and preserve our rights. This law that prohibits people from having a gun if they're under indictment, it's only about 50 years old, which means it wasn't around in 1791 when they wrote the Second Amendment. And there's really only a few states that have this law. So first off, actually, let me read a little bit here. This is from Reason. Reason wrote an article here. Ohio court strikes down categorical prohibition on gun possession by people under indictment. A few months ago, the Sixth Circuit upheld the federal categorical prohibition on gun acquisition and transportation by people under indictment. An excerpt from Friday's long decision in State versus Brown, written by Ohio Court of Appeals Judge Pierre Bergeron, joined by Judge Jennifer Kinsley. In 2023, a grand jury indicted Mr. Brown on one count of robbery. The court released Mr. Brown on bond with an electric monitor on his ankle, but it did not place any restrictions on his ability to possess a firearm. During a home visit by the EMU team, they located a loaded firearm in the apartment. This discovery spawned a new indictment pursuant to state law for having a weapon under a disability. The state's robbery case against Mr. Brown eventually collapsed, which led to the dismissal of those charges against him. But the weapons under a disability case was still at play. So in other words, they said, hey, we think you robbed somebody, this guy, Mr. Brown. And they indicted him. Now, Gary, what exactly is how do you explain an indictment? Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. What exactly is an indictment?
Well, let me explain it to you in California, because every state's a little different. And federal court's a little different. There are two ways for a felony to move through the court system. You can have your felony case go to preliminary hearing, which is a hearing where you get a lawyer, they get a lawyer, and a judge will decide whether there's a sufficiency of evidence or enough evidence to have reasonable cause to believe you committed the crime. So that's a preliminary hearing. Well, you can avoid a preliminary hearing, or the prosecutor can avoid a preliminary hearing in California by seeking an indictment. An indictment means you just take the same case to the grand jury. Well, at the grand jury, there's no defense lawyer. So there's an old line that's pretty appropriate that a prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich because there's nobody on the defendant's side in an indictment.
They get to show what they want to show, and
they get to do whatever they want, basically, as long as they present any exculpatory evidence. That's required in California.
Okay.
But at the end of the indictment process, if a grand jury returns an indictment, it's just like a judge said at the end of a preliminary hearing, well, I find there's sufficient evidence. Well, if either one of those things happens in California, at that moment you become a prohibited person and you got to give up your guns until the case is over.
Right. And there was in the dissent, by the way. So he was suspected of robbery. They indicted him. He's going through the process. They even said, "Hey, you got to wear this ankle monitor. We're not going to put you in jail, but you got to wear this ankle monitor." And when they checked on him, they found that he had a firearm. And apparently, the state of Ohio, prohibits people who are under indictment from having a firearm. Is that the same here in California?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same here in California.
So that means that California's law is susceptible to a Heller and Bruin attack.
At least at this level, which is why I wanted people to see that. I think that this is, I'm going to say, kissing cousins to the idea of red flag laws what's it called?
Gun violence restraining order?
Gun violence restraining order. Yeah, sorry. So it's a kissing cousin to a gun violence restraining order. The judge here is basically saying, hey, look, this guy, we don't know if he committed a crime yet. He hasn't been convicted. So you can't take his basic right to self-defense away, which is the Second Amendment. That's the same case we're making in these gun violence restraining orders. Is it it's not the same, but don't you think it's kind of side by side a kissing cousin?
It is. But Michael, you and I have talked about this. California, certainly San Diego, and if you don't know this, California is the tip of the spear for gun violence restraining orders, red flag laws nationwide. All the bad ideas with regard to gun violence restraining order and red flag laws come out of this county, starting in 2017. But the prosecutors and the police have avoided this problem. They don't need to wait for somebody to get indicted or somebody to have a preliminary hearing finding. They are GVROing people at the beginning of the case. Yeah. So you'll be arrested, you'll get a criminal case, and they'll GVRO you at the same time. And so you're losing your guns the same day you're arrested.
And there you go. And this judge is saying, hey, you know what? That's unconstitutional. This isn't final, but I thought it was very, very good news that, hey, there's another court out there that's basically making the same case for us. It's in a slightly different situation, but the Second Amendment is not a secondary right. So there you go. Anything else you guys want to add on that? No?
Nope.
Okay, so H.R. 38, this is something else that people are talking about a lot. H.R. 38, the CCW reciprocity introduced. Don't get excited yet.
People talk a lot about it. I don't think they realize the reality on the back end of it, of the world movement that would need to happen for this to be real.
So let's talk about why I don't think you should get excited, because everybody is. And I want it to happen. I'm all for CCW reciprocity. But let's look at a couple things. Mm-hmm. Last time there was a bill talking about CCW reciprocity, we were in the same political situation. The Republicans owned everything. Trump was in office, and it still didn't go through. So that's one reason to not get excited. The other reason to not get excited, there's at least two other reasons. So the second reason to not get excited is the motivation was a little different. There was a lot of pushback on CCWs. And what I mean by that, so functionally, there were a lot of states there were a handful of states where you couldn't get a CCW, like California. Couldn't get a CCW. So what we were trying to do was get CCW reciprocity. Then everybody in California would go get a Utah CCW, and then boom, California would have to honor it. So the motivation was a little bit different. Well, all right, Mike. So what? The motivation's different. Why does that make a difference? Well, here's where I think things get sticky from a legal point of view. The way H.R. 38 is written, is it says, hey, if you got a CCW, everybody has to honor it. And that's the way it should be, just like a driver's license. And according to, by the way, Bruin, requiring a CCW is not unconstitutional. It was specifically written in that case. So whether you like CCWs or not, I get it, but the reality is the most pro Second Amendment Supreme Court justice who probably has ever served or at least commented on the Second Amendment wrote in his decision that it is not unconstitutional for you to require a CCW. So there are a number of states that don't require CCWs. You're totally allowed to not require a CCW. Those are constitutional carry states. What are there, 27, 28, maybe even 29 now?
29.
29 states. So now what? Well, the second part of that, of H.R. 38, and I'm paraphrasing, it basically, first part says, hey, if you have a CCW, everyone has to honor it. Second part is, if you're qualified to carry concealed in your state, every state has to honor that too. So an open carry state like Arizona, it looks like all they would need is like an Arizona driver's license, and then they'd be able to carry in all 50 states, concealed. I'm telling you right now, I would put money and a stake that ain't going to pass. I'm not saying that H.R. 38 isn't going to pass. It might pass, but not the way it's written currently. I just don't think that the folks serving in office right now have the intestinal fortitude to pass that. I mean, it in effect will make much of the country constitutional carry totally supportive. That's great.
I got a take on that.
Go for
I think
it.
It's going to be.
Lay it on me.
I think it's going to destroy CCW schemes in the entire country. And I think that's going to happen under equal protection. So somebody can come here from Arizona with a driver's license and carry. I'm a California citizen, and you're making me get a license. That's a violation of equal protection of laws. And so I think that if this passes, it's going to destroy CCW schemes in every other state.
So I 100% agree with you, and that's why I don't think it's going to pass. I hope I'm wrong. I hope these folks that we elected in November, I hope the majority, that took over, I hope that I'm totally wrong about them, and they do. But from what I've seen in the past, I just don't have a lot of faith. I hope it passes. I hope it passes in an even better form than it is right now. I want to be crystal clear. I just don't have a lot of faith in elected officials.
If it squeezes through the House, the only way it's going to get through the Senate is through some sort of reconciliation bill, because they're not getting 60 votes on it. And so they're going to have to get it through on reconciliation under 50 votes. Man, I don't know if they can do that.
As currently written.
As it's currently written, yeah.
And this is kind of a thing that they do. They write a law and say, hey, this is a perfect case scenario. This is everything I want, so that they can negotiate down like, all right, well, it's close to everything I want. I mean, if at the very least they get it to where if you have a CCW, it's recognized by all 50 states, that's a step forward. Is that ideal? Is that everything I want? No. But I will be shocked and amazed if H.R. 38 passes in its current state. Anyway,
Don't hold your breath.
I'm not going to hold my breath. All right, that's all you need to know as far as legal and legislative for the week.
All right, that's our legal and legislative segment.
Wabam.
And go.
All right. Our in-studio guest, we've already had excellent conversations with, Gary Gibson. I asked him here for a very specific reason. As far as, we wanted to talk about USCCA. There's been a lot of chatter on the internet from people that I like and trust, all over the internet, from people that are on our side, about USCCA, and it got me curious about some things. So I brought Gary in to talk about it. And this segment is sponsored by Cargo, Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon. Cargostores.com. Check them out online. They're located at 423 Broadway in El Cajon. If you need to protect your gear while you're on the go, look no further. Cargo has the perfect case for you. From trusted American brands like Pelican, SKB, Seahorse, Underwater Kinetics, and S3 to top-tier imports like Canadian-made Nanook and Italian-crafted HPRC. They've got it all. With over 2,000 models to choose from, you'll find a case for everything. And here's the best part. Cargo keeps hundreds of cases in stock, ready to go, but they also offer custom foam inserts, connectivity solutions, and even branded cases to make it uniquely yours. So check them out. Use 10% to get 10% off. Use GOR either at the store or online. Great products, great prices, and uncommonly good service. Cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon. Okay, so we're going to talk about USCCA. Now, I got to tell you, back in 2017, San Diego County Gun Owners was able to get the sheriff at the time to start issuing CCWs. And we're very proud of the political work that we did on that and the progress we made. It didn't take too long before a lot of the products or companies that offer products that help cover legal costs of someone carrying a gun, not necessarily a CCW holder or any gun owner, but it definitely became more interesting to people as they started to be able to get their CCW. So boom, everybody flew into town. All of a sudden, hey, San Diego, here we are. We're ready to, save the day. I read the writing on the wall pretty quick and said, you know what? I don't want to pick one. I want to just do an analysis of everybody and show you, hey, here are the pluses and minuses. I think if you have a CCW, you're foolish if you don't have some kind of product like this, if you don't have some kind of coverage. But I'm not going to tell you which one to pick. The other thing is we don't have like a partnership program. San Diego County Gun Owners, me personally, I don't have some kind of partnership program with any of these. And I am a member of just about all of them. And the reason I don't have a membership agreement, meaning I don't make money, is because we have so many gun ranges and gun shops that are members of San Diego County Gun Owners and so many instructors. I didn't want to compete with them. I didn't want to have people sign up and then, one of our members lose business because of it. That's not what we're trying to do. We're a political organization. We're an education organization. So we remained agnostic. Now, if you go on our website, if you go to sdcgo.org, there's or inlandempiregunowners.com or .org or orangecountygunowners.com. There's actually a side-by-side comparison of 4 or 5 of them. USCCA is definitely one of those. Now, USCCA, in full disclosure, they have made donations to San Diego County Gun Owners, but they haven't done anything in 2025. They haven't done anything in 2024. The donations were in the form of sponsoring a table at our gala, and I think they did that for 3 years in a row. But what I'm trying to tell you here is I don't have some kind of financial interest here. I do have an interest in all of our members who, getting a CCW and then being covered because we care, frankly. So I know there were a lot of fights, a lot of arguments, a lot of debates, a lot of sales, a lot of spy versus spy when it comes to these different groups, and I tried hard to remain agnostic. I would pretty much let any of these groups come up and talk to anybody and say, "Hey, tell us what's great about you guys." I can tell you that USCCA, I started hearing grumblings. But honestly, I hear grumblings about all of them, so I didn't really pay close attention. But then this past week, I heard kind of a cluster of grumblings from people who have loud voices on the internet. And I don't mean that derogatory. I mean people that have a lot of followers. So I decided, you know what? I want to look into this. I really want to get down to the bottom of it, And the first thing to kick off this criticism of USCCA was a case, the Kayla Giles case, where USCCA, the scuttlebutt around the internet and around town was they didn't cover somebody. They decided, hey, we're going to drop this person. That seemed to be the case that made a lot of people, not a lot, it made a certain number of people rethink USCCA. I didn't really pay that much attention to the details. But now we have the benefit of going back and looking at, because this case has pretty much come to a conclusion. So I invited Gary to come in and talk about the Kayla Giles. Kayla Giles? Yeah. Kayla Giles case, and just analyze it for us and talk about, like, hey, what happened? And let's see, did this actually, did USCCA do something wrong? or is what they did justified? So why don't you give us the background, Gary?
Sure. Kayla Giles is a case out of Louisiana. And you have to understand that Louisiana is a different kind of place with regard to law. 49 states use English common law, but Louisiana uses French and Spanish influences in their law. Not that it's affected their criminal law very much, primarily their civil, but it's a different kind of place. And I'm not a Louisiana lawyer. But I did read the Louisiana appellate court case, and if you want to read that, all you have to do is go and type into Google Third Circuit Louisiana, and you'll get their website, go into their search engine and type in Kayla Giles, and you can bring up the case and read it. It's only 27 pages. I read it a couple of times today just to be sure I had my facts right.
So what's the gist? Set it up. What's the gist? How did this start?
Kayla Giles got married in 2014 to a person that we will refer to as the deceased.
Okay.
So she married the deceased in 2014, and then in 2018...
He wasn't deceased at the time, which, by the way...
That would have still been illegal in Louisiana.
Well, I was going to say, that would have made it an even more Louisiana case. But anyway, we'll keep going. All right,
So by 2018, things are going south for them with regard to their marriage. And they're in the middle of a divorce. And there's allegations on both sides, to the point that both of them get a domestic violence restraining order issued against each of them to stay away from the other person. And that happens in early September, late August of 2018. Now remember, this is 6.5 years ago now. We're talking September of 2018 is where the Kayla Giles case comes out of. Well, Kayla did a couple of things that she probably in retrospect wishes that she hadn't done. One of them was tell a friend of hers that she wanted to kill her husband. And she did that in early 2018.
which, by the way, I think a lot of people going through a stressful breakup or whatever, I mean, who knows? A lot of people say a lot of things, but that's definitely a data point.
I can say that I have heard many, many times my spouse say that perhaps that would be a good outcome in our marriage.
Right. So, but basing it entirely on her making a statement to a friend, not good enough,
No,
but it's
not
a data
good enough.
point.
But she also asked a friend to borrow a gun.
Now we're getting somewhere.
And this is the beginning of 2018, because the time is really important.
Right.
The timeline is crucial to this case. So she asked her friend to borrow a gun. She tells her friend she wants to kill her husband. And then things keep progressively getting worse. They have an altercation. Kayla's perspective on this is that he slammed her leg with the door of a car and that she punched him or slapped him after that. That resulted in the the domestic violence restraining orders being issued. As we move forward into late 2018, late August, Kayla buys a gun. Well, there's one problem with that. She went to Texas to buy the gun because she had a CCW in Texas. And so she didn't have to background herself when she bought the gun because she had a CCW in Texas.
So did she have dual residency at some point? Did she move,
I
or did she
don't
get an
know.
out-of-state
I don't know.
permit?
That wasn't in the opinion. It just said that she was able to buy a gun in Texas because she had a Texas CCW. That is in the opinion.
I don't know. I'm assuming you can get a Texas CCW without being a Texas resident.
But here's the problem. She was under a domestic violence restraining order in Louisiana. She wasn't allowed to own a gun.
Yeah.
And so she bought a .380. And she told people, and a friend testified at trial, that she was afraid of her husband, that her husband had bought guns to the child custody exchanges before, and that she was in fear for her life from him. But that person also said she had never seen any violence on behalf of her husband, the soon-to-be deceased. So now we move into early September, and Kayla starts doing some searches. She also, the same day she bought the gun, she got USCCA CCW insurance. Same day she got the gun, or within a very short period of time after that. She began researching online for justifiable killings in Louisiana.
They checked like her Google history or whatever, and she's doing search history for...
They did, but in order to do that, they had to get a hold of her computer. And unfortunately, that was one of the things that she was convicted of, was obstruction of justice, because she tried to hide her computer that had all of this information on it. And she wound up getting 30 years just for the obstruction of justice.
Right. And let's back up. So she was doing these searches, and then... So she She has a restraining order against him. He has a restraining order against her. She goes to Texas to purchase a gun because she knows she can get away with it there. She gets USCCA insurance, and now at home she starts doing searches for how to
self-defense, justifiable homicide, and there's one other bad part. She tells her friend, and this text message was recovered, that I've deleted my social media history. I'm going to do something that's going to make the news. Can you please go fund a bail funding for me?
Like a GoFundMe. Now, just doing justifiable homicide, you could just be like, hey, I want to get familiar with the laws. But sending a message like that, that's probably, again, another pretty important data point.
It's not one thing in place. It's buying the gun in violation of the restraining order, telling your friend you want to kill your husband, asking them to get a gun, saying you're deleting your social media history. It all looks premeditated from an external point of view at that point in time. So now we move to September 7th or 8th of 2018, and there's a child custody exchange between Kayla and her husband. The husband wants to do the exchange at a police department. She refuses. So the exchange is done in a Walmart parking lot. And there's a Sonics across the street, and a very grainy video is what exists. So they did the child custody exchange. Kayla's daughter is in her car and was a witness in the case. And her husband makes probably what is the worst decision of his life, which is after Kayla's back in her car, her husband walks over to her car and opens her door. Her husband is unarmed. Kayla told the police after she shot him that he was aggressive and moving towards her. The video doesn't support that. In fact, he shot very quickly after he opens her door. And the daughter in the car testified that he was not aggressive. He just opened the door. So we really have no idea why he did that.
Do we know how old the daughter is, or what?
I don't. It wasn't in the opinion. I didn't see that. But what hit an interesting point was she was in her car. Well, guess what that triggered in Louisiana? The Castle Doctrine.
Oh, geez.
Because she's in her car, so she has a presumption that she's in fear.
Because he opened the door.
But it's not. It's a rebuttable presumption. It means the prosecutor gets to go beyond it. Like, well, hold on for a minute. Let's go back to I'm going to kill my husband, and I got to get a gun, and I need bail money, and so they can rebut that presumption. But she is cloaked with the presumption, and so her husband opens the door, and she shoots him in the chest, and he dies. And she stays there, and she gets arrested. When she gets into custody, she's trying to hide her computer in some fashion. And that cost her a conviction on obstruction of justice for that when she eventually got to trial.
She told, I think if I remember correctly, she told somebody, "Hey, get rid of my computer."
No, it was cryptic. It was just, can you move the flowered bag, because the computer was in a bag. And so it was real cryptic because remember, all jail communications are recorded.
Monitored, yeah.
And so she can't say, "Can you hide my computer?" She's got to say something different. But this is where USCCA gets involved.
I was going to say, she's in jail now. Nobody knows all the stuff that you just said.
Correct.
You know what I mean? There's very, very limited information. At this point, all that is known is that she fired a gun, killed somebody that was her ex-husband, or soon-to-be ex-husband, claiming it was self-defense. That's all it's known right now. They don't know that she
was afraid of him.
Yeah.
And, I have to add something, because I put this in my lectures when I do self-defense lectures. Husband was 215, 6'1", an MMA fighter.
Ooh.
Kayla's 5'2", 115.
Yeah.
That's a significant physical difference. And so when I tell most people about self-defense is if you shoot an unarmed person, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Unless there is a significant physical disparity that you can't survive taking that first hit. A 300-pound man, a 100-pound woman. You might get away at that point with shooting somebody that's unarmed. But there is a significant physical discrepancy that accrued to her benefit. USCCA steps in at this point. And just so you understand how USCCA works, USCCA has a company called Delta Defense. Delta Defense is who you're contracting with for your CCW insurance, although it is under the umbrella of USCCA. Delta Defense contracts with United Fire Casualty Insurance Company, UFCIC. that is their insurance company who is paying their claims for their CCW insurance. So it is an insurance product.
Right. They fund it. They're the funding arm.
They are. And you have to understand, when you buy insurance, no matter what the insurance is, insurance can't cover you for intentional crimes. They can't, by law, you can't get home fire insurance and then set fire to your house and claim you want the fire insurance company to pay. You can't run your car into a wall because you want to get it fixed and then use your comprehensive coverage for your auto policy to pay it. And there's a conflict here because almost all of these cases start with an allegation of criminal conduct. Who would they be covering if it wasn't an allegation of criminal conduct?
Right.
And so there's an inherent tension there that they have tried to walk the line on, from what I can see, based on my experience with them. And this was the first time that they really got hit with, and I'm not privy to USCCA's internal discussions, but I can see that once all of this information fed itself out, remember, USCCA funded Kayla Giles from the inception. They paid $50,000 to her lawyer. But once all this information came out through the, quote, discovery process, discovery just means the exchange of information in a criminal case. Once all this information came out, I think they came to the conclusion that she got their policy to kill her husband and immunize herself from her premeditated killing of her husband. That's the conclusion that they came to into the process.
And then they basically said, all right, we're done. We're not going to do any more. Right?
They
USCCA.
stopped covering her at that point.
How much had they covered her by that point?
$50,000.
So $50,000. They say, hey, wait a minute. There's all this evidence showing that we think that this was thought out in advance, and so we're not going to cover you. We're not going to spend any more than this $50,000 we already spent.
Well, it's got to work backwards. I mean, the insurance company got this information. It's like, hey, we've got rules. We can't pay for intentional criminal conduct.
Now, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is there an insurance company, self-defense insurance company out there that does not have this clause?
No. It's illegal. You're
Right.
covered by the insurance commissioners of all 50 states. And in fact, people that have a subscription method where you're paying money to a group who then assigns you a lawyer that's not an insurance-based program, is basically a member-funded program. People that have that are starting to run into problems in states that think, we don't care what you're saying, you're providing an insurance product. Yeah, you can call it whatever you want.
If it walks like a duck and it quacks and it swims like a duck, it's a duck.
So I know that one program has gotten into hot water in Connecticut, and now they're being supervised, at least there's a consent decree or an agreement that they're being supervised by the insurance commissioner in Connecticut, notwithstanding the fact they say they're not providing insurance. And I think that that's going to happen in other states. I just see it happening. The insurance commissioner is going to want to regulate the market.
It's a distinct possibility. And okay, so USCCA has now said, we're not giving you any more. We're not doing this case anymore because of what we've uncovered. We're not doing the case anymore. And at that point, that's when things kind of blew up. Like, well, wait a minute, they're not covering her?
Well, I have to tell you, as a criminal defense lawyer, if I'm $50,000 into a case and establish a relationship with somebody and are driving their case, you're really pantsing me and that client at that point when you pull the funding. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be your lawyer. It may mean that. It just means they're going to have to come up with a different funding source to pay the money. And these are expensive cases. I was just privy to information that USCCA paid out almost $500,000 on a case in Northern California recently, on a murder case in Northern California. That's a staggering amount of money. But, an average murder case in San Diego now that's complicated with complicated forensics is going to take a couple $100,000 in order to roll this to a conclusion with experts, with investigators, and paying for the lawyers. And so, when I look at it, I'm disappointed that USCCA pulled the funding when they're that far into a case. I get that. But I also get the inherent tension that they believed at that point that their insurance product was being manipulated by the member.
Well, and so they believed it was manipulated. What was the result? Now we're at a point where we can see not the results of one case, but two cases. So the result of her case, what happened?
Kayla goes to trial and she gets convicted of second-degree murder not first-degree premeditated murder, second-degree murder, and she gets convicted of obstruction of justice for trying to hide her computer. And the penalties for that was staggering. I think she got life without parole for the murder and plus 30 years consecutive, which means that the judge was not too impressed, consecutive, on top of her life without parole, not at the same time.
Now, what's second-degree murder? Define what, someone has no idea what you're talking about.
Well,
what
in California, there's 2 degrees of murder. The first-degree murder is premeditated and deliberated murder. Second-degree murder is all other murders where there's an intent to kill, but there's not manifested a premeditation and deliberation. Like it was instantaneous. You pissed me off, and I took my gun out and shot you in a half a second.
So what does that do? The fact that she was, what does that do to the case? What does that do for, as far as USCCA's decision?
Well,
is it
I don't know if
or negative or either way?
I don't know if it does anything for their decision. I think she had to replace her original lawyer. She went to trial with a different lawyer. That certainly could have impacted her ability to defend herself. But USCCA was in a bad position. And again, this is a really unique type of case. I haven't heard anything other than the Kayla Giles case being used to beat on USCCA. I mean, I hear it too. I watch the same videos you do. I watch the same influencers. And so Kayla Giles keeps coming up over and over and over and over again. And it's 6 years old.
Yeah, well, and there was a second case, though, too, where she actually sued USCCA civilly, saying, hey, you guys didn't fulfill your contract.
Well, I mean, the contract says that we don't cover intentional criminal conduct. So she lost that case pretty quickly, civilly. But she went to a appellate court, and that's the case that you can read if you want to go in the 3rd District Court of Appeal for Louisiana and type in Kayla Giles. You can read it. If you want to read it, they turned down all her arguments. And the one they turned down really quickly was sufficiency of the evidence. She made 6 claims, if I'm remembering right, that went wrong with her case. The one that has the most meat to it is basically 2 jurors were left on the jury that shouldn't have been left on the jury. She wanted them kicked off. They were actually kicked off, but she had to use challenges to kick them off, as opposed to the judge kicking them off. And legally, it just meant that she probably should have gotten some more challenges, or those jurors should have been kicked off by the judge. That's the most interesting argument. The appellate court absolutely quickly cut out her sufficiency of the evidence by saying, you threatened to kill your husband, you bought a gun illegally, you said you're going to need bail money, you're going to delete your social media, you're trying to hide your computer, you shot an unarmed guy. That's enough for a jury to convict you.
Now, and you're an attorney, and you've worked with USCCA how many times?
4 times in county. Yeah.
4 times. And how has your experience been with USCCA?
Great. I mean, all my cases with USCCA have been paid very quickly. Most of the cases, I've actually been in touch with USCCA the same moment or very quickly in the arrest. In fact, on 2 of my cases, my bondsman beat the person being arrested to jail. That my bondsman was at the jail when the person arrived at the jail.
And your cases haven't been, there's been some hair on the deal, as they say. I don't know how else to put it, but you were just telling me about a case where a guy, there was clearly some illegal activity, and he still got covered. Do you want to talk about the details of that a little bit?
A little bit. Guy got in a road rage. He gets arrested, and during the course of the road rage, they search his truck, and in his truck, he has got a lawfully purchased pistol, but he doesn't have a CCW. So he's carrying a concealed weapon in his vehicle in violation of California law because he doesn't have a CCW.
And also used, to defend himself,
Well, he had bear spray in his car, but
which is illegal.
But
they didn't charge him.
They did not. All they charged was the gun, and they walked away from the road rage stuff, and they charged him with the gun in the glove box.
And that case went swimmingly. I mean, as far as your relationship with USCCA.
Sure, USCCA paid me before we actually got to court in order to defend him, and we managed to work through the road rage stuff. But now we're going to court for the gun in the glove compartment. Well, that's not part of Delta Defense's UFCIC's remit. They're not there to prevent you from illegal weapons possession. Right. It's a self-defense insurance.
Now, let's talk about that, because I think that's an important difference. There's kind of this misconception where it's like, well, if you're breaking the law, they'll drop you. That's not exactly it. If he were robbing a bank, if that was what he was using this defense insurance for.
Plotting to kill his wife.
but not if he were breaking the law by carrying a concealed weapon illegally.
But, this had a happy ending because USCIC sent it back to Delta Defense, and USCCA Foundation paid this.
Oh, wow.
They're paying for his criminal case out of USCCA.
Nice. Now, how would you describe, is there a legal terminology, or how would you describe the difference between I'm doing something, normal, I'm driving down the street, but I happen to have an illegal gun, versus I'm robbing a bank and have an illegal gun? You know what I mean? Like, how do you describe that difference? Like an intentional, or how do you describe that difference between breaking laws?
How do I describe it? I describe it as, silly putty, sticking your hand into it and not knowing what you're going to grab. It's so loose. We just don't know. Each case is individualized by facts.
Yeah.
USCCA has to make a decision, or UFCIC has to make a decision on coverage instantaneously. And usually they talk to the lawyer and say, what do you know about the case? What are they saying? Because we don't know what the cops are saying. We don't have reports yet. But we do know what the defendant is saying, or the person arrested is saying, or the person about to be charged. So all we can go with is, what are they telling you? What were you arrested for? Then we can go back to the insurance company and say, this is what he was arrested for, and this is what he's saying. It looks like a straight-face self-defense case.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's winnable. It just means that there is enough to say, yeah, you know what? This could be self-defense.
Here's I got to tell you, from the very beginning, San Diego County Gunners, we defend people. Excuse me. We stand for gun owners who are sane, trained, and law-abiding. The law-abiding section, does that mean they're what if they've ever jaywalked? Then no. We have to use some discretion and some subjectivity when it comes to law-abiding. But I got to tell you, I'm a member of USCCA. I pay for it. It's not comped. Again, I work with Adam, who's the local rep, who's wonderful. He's been supportive. He's been far more supportive than any of the other organizations. But, the support we get from USCCA, number one, doesn't go into my pocket. It helps support the organization. And number two, it's not make or break support. In other words, if they didn't support us, we'd still be an organization. It's not like we're, hanging on, thanks to the support of USCCA. Still, they've been extremely generous, and Adam is wonderful to work with. So I've had a great experience with USCCA. I've turned people over to you. You've worked with people that are covered by USCCA. They've been wonderful. So I haven't had any customer service issues, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I haven't used any of their training. I don't really care about it. But my understanding is that the folks that have taken their classes have said that they're wonderful. But here's where I'm going. There is a way for someone to be covered who is intentionally trying to harm somebody, who's breaking a law that is, horrible, right? I mean, it's not jaywalking, like they're trying to kill somebody. There is insurance that'll cover that. I'm not looking for that. I'm not going to go kill somebody. I might defend my life, and that may end, because someone's life because of lethal force. But I didn't know all this about Kayla Giles and her case before about 3 or 4 days ago. And the idea that she was clearly going beyond self-defense, that she was trying to end somebody's life, her soon-to-be ex-husband, and that she was doing it in a way that is morally wrong, is legally wrong, and that 2 separate court cases, a criminal court case and a civil court case, have both confirmed that. I get what you're saying, Gary, that, maybe from a PR standpoint or just from a procedural standpoint, they probably just should have kept funding this case and kind of, turned the other way. But I kind of like the fact that they said, hey, you know what? These aren't we're not going to fund this person. And it's not a money-making thing. I mean, the fact that, let's say they saved $150,000 or $200,000 or $300,000. Let's say they saved $500,000 on this case. This is one of the few cases that they refused. Oh, by the way, they didn't go back and try to collect the $50,000 that they spent. So even if they saved $500,000, that didn't make or break USCCA. I got to tell you, I'm not holding it against them. That they decided that Kayla Giles, apologize, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, that she didn't fit the criteria, that she broke the terms of the contract, and that they didn't feel comfortable covering somebody who looked like they planned and then executed someone's murder. I don't hold that against them.
And USCCA, you said something really important. They paid $50K out. They did not seek reimbursement of that $50K from Kayla Giles.
Right.
They just walked away from it, and that seems to be something that I hear from people in the classes that I teach too. That while USCCA is going to, once I get convicted, if I get convicted of anything, if I get convicted of a lesser included offense, if I get convicted of obstruction of justice and I win my murder, then you're going to say it's intentional conduct and you're going to recoup. As far as I can tell, based on what USCCA says, they have never in the history of their organization, thousands of people represented, ever recouped money.
Oh, is that a clause? Yes.
Is it a
But
clause in their
is it-
contract? Yes.
Is it a clause in every self-defense insurance policy?
Yes.
Yes.
And here's the thing: they have the ability to do it, but they've really refined their contract. And they said they will never recoup unless they are ordered to recoup by the insurance commissioner or other executives of the state. So they're not going to recoup money unless they're told by their governing bodies to recoup the money,
Interesting.
and
Well,
they haven't been.
I have to say, as a policyholder, I'm personally thankful that my monthly dues were not going to Kayla's beyond the 50,000. I'm okay with them not funding the rest. Personally,
I think I am. I just don't think that is a good use of money. I don't think it's a good precedent to set. Again, I get like the optics of it. Like they wouldn't have to put up with all this. But
right? Like in hindsight, it's 2020.
In hindsight, they probably wish they would have paid a few $100,000 just to avoid the
stigma, yeah.
slander of the attack on them.
I'm not totally convinced either. Now, listen, everyone out there who's criticized the USCCA, you guys have valid complaints. I'm not going to try to convince you. I'm certainly not going to question anything about what you're saying. Everyone has to, live life through their own perspective. That's fine. But I'm not entirely sure. If it wasn't Kayla, it would have been something else. There seems to be something else behind this USCCA criticism. It's not. It doesn't seem to be this clear cut that they saw what happened with Kayla and made this massive decision. That doesn't seem to be. It just can't be the motivator.
Well,
And I'm not going to speculate on what it is, but
well, I will.
go ahead.
The motivator is that other companies want to take their market share. USCCA is the big dog, and there's a lot of money in this business. And so if you beat up USCCA, people are still going to need coverage. They're going to come somewhere else, and you might be the person they come to.
Yeah, and there's two things about that. First off, we as a community are extremely good at making mountains out of molehills. Like if I got to hear another debate between, which is better, a 9mm or a 45. I mean,
The one that's in your hand.
Well, it's clearly a 45.
Yeah. I mean, we are excellent at doing two things. One, making mountains out of molehills, and two, eating our own. And I'm tired of that. I just don't want to participate. The idea that people are attacking USCCA as if they are somehow harming the community or bad for the community, I just don't understand it. I think it's a huge mistake. I've had a wonderful relationship with them. Like I said, Adam, our local rep, is great. I'm absolutely intending on sticking with them. One of the big reasons I want to stick with them is, I know a handful of lawyers in San Diego, here in California. I want those attorneys working on my case if I ever get into a self-defense situation. You're one of them, Gary. You know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure that the attorneys that I know and trust here in San Diego are the ones that, that are defending me in court. I don't want somebody I don't know. And I have relationships, San Diego County Gun Owners Radio. We have relationships with attorneys, all over California. We know some of the best defense attorneys out there and who work with USCCA and I think others, but, USCCA. And that's one thing that's extremely important to me. But I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm glad I better understand what's going on with USCCA. Again, they've been great.
You said something at the beginning, which is understand the product that you're getting.
Yeah.
If you don't think that USCCA is the right product for you, then understand the product that you're buying to replace them. For example, USCCA is covering gun violence restraining orders. They're paying me for a gun violence restraining order case. Now, we're seeing a lot more gun violence restraining orders coming out of California. So if you get a criminal case in a GVRO, be sure that your provider is paying for the GVRO, or else you're going to have to go hire your own lawyer.
Right.
An additional thing about the GVRO I'd like to throw in there that you haven't talked about is that there's a fallout. If you have a GVRO issued against you and you happen to have a CCW, there's an additional punishment of 5 years.
You have
that
if you get a GVRO against you, issued against you, you have a 5-year denial from the date the GVRO expires. So you can't get your CCW back for 5 years after the GVRO is gone.
Yeah.
So it's a huge imposition. Also, USCCA covers civil, cover up to $2 million in civil. If you shoot somebody, I can guarantee you some lawyer is going to be suing you.
And there are a lot of the products have a lot of these. But I don't want to go too deep into. I mean, I can tell you that. Like I said, we've had a great experience. I know one of the other criticisms is, when you call, you don't talk to an attorney directly. You talk to someone at a call center. I don't think there's a single example where that's worked against anybody. In other words, I don't see that that's something that's made or broken a case.
I know my experiences have been that the people that are calling the call center are generally the family members of the person who's insured because they're in custody. They're in police custody. It's rare that those are the people that are calling.
Yeah.
And so, I agree with you. I haven't heard anything about that.
Which I think is another mountain out of a molehill.
Gary, how much would you charge to sit at a telephone, 24/7 to be on call? What would that do to my rate to have you on?
Yeah, if we put you in a call center, what would your hourly rate be?
Well, your rate would be less than Michael's. So because Michael will call me all the freaking time,
I do
and you
anyway.
would only call me when you're in trouble. But no, it would be really expensive to have me answer your calls alone, 24/7.
But the important part is I understand why a firm that has attorneys, manning the phones. I understand why they would try to make that why they try to differentiate themselves from USCCA.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to point out that it has never been a factor in any case.
I
It's not a
agree.
negative.
I agree with what they're saying. You are not covered by attorney-client privilege when you call the USCCA call center. You're not.
Right.
But
That's true.
But I don't know if that's ever been an issue, and I
don't
agree
think it
with you on
has.
that.
If it has, someone correct me. The other criticism that comes up a lot is the fact that one of their spokespersons, people, whatever, they've had Tim Kennedy do a number of things. I agree with people. I'm very unimpressed with his views on Second Amendment and the statements he's made, and I hope they don't hire him back. But as far as my experience with USCCA, I don't see it. I think I'm as unbiased as anyone is out there or can be who's had firsthand experience with USCCA, and I think that people are overreacting. I don't understand why they're splitting from USCCA.
I mean, my opinion is if you have the coin, buy a couple of products. If you think USCCA is not going to cover you, then hire somebody else and keep USCCA. It's just find the products that fit the breadth of coverage that you are going to need. And if you don't have coverage, and I don't care who you purchase somebody, because you are at risk. Your family's at risk. Your livelihood's at risk. Your house is at risk. Everything you own is at risk in a self-defense shooting.
I agree with you. What else, Gary? Anything else?
That's it. Well, fake news.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to get through some of these things. Be sure and screen out opinions as opposed to facts.
Well, yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think we've given some facts and opinions here, but I just wanted to share my experience. And here in California, with the relationship we have and the experience I've had and the looking into it that we've done and the results of this Kayla Giles case, I think work in USCCA's favor. So, Alicia, got anything to wrap up?
Just one thought that I
Sure.
had as we were talking about it, the whole thing with the Giles case, they are making a big. They're choosing this as their landmark case to kind of really bring home the whole idea of you'll be denied if you are convicted, kind of a thing, right? Kind of taking similar concept to the guy that we had the home defender up in L.A. last
Right.
November.
Right.
They made it. There was a big, huge explosion made in the news about they pulled his CCW. I'm curious, why are they picking this as their landmark? If you get into an incident, they're going to pull it as part of, or at least suspend it.
Well, if you get
pending-
arrested for a felony, they're snatching your CCW.
Right. So I just find it curious that they are choosing this to be their hill.
I've kind of wondered that too. Why pick this Kayla Giles case? And I think that it's one of the very few. I think there's one or two other cases that I reference, and maybe we'll talk about those and in coming shows, but this was the big one. I think that I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if like, hey, here's the opportunity. This is where we're gonna drive the wedge.
Well, my prediction is that the Louisiana Supreme Court may reverse her conviction, but it won't be because of the sufficiency of the evidence to convict her. It'll be because of some procedural issues, like 2 jurors shouldn't have been on the jury.
Interesting. Okay. All right, we're going to end that discussion. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Gary, how do they get a hold of you? You got a website or something? I just turn on, like, I have this enormous light, and I project it onto a cloud, and you come swooping in,
It's usually it's a backlit single digit.
Yeah, well, it just says GG, and all of a sudden you come swoop in, and I say, hey, I forgot to say thank you, and you say you never have to. It's the whole thing.
If you type into Google Gary Gibson, Attorney San Diego, the first hit will get you my bio.
Cool. Thank you, Gary. All right, let's move on. All right, let's talk about deployment. Where do you need to be? We want to make activism easy. We do make activism easy. That's the whole point of the show. That's the whole point of the organization. So we want to make sure that you know where you got to be. What do we need you to do? Where can you show up and be do something in the line of activism? Also, check out Red, White, and Badass Brew Coffee. They are sponsors of this little section here of our show. RWBBC Coffee, rwbbccoffee.com. Check them out. Use GOR to get 15% off. You a coffee guy, Gary?
I am.
Have you tried Red, White, and Badass Brew yet?
I have had some, but yes, it's quite good.
It is good,
No.
right? What's their whiskey a go-go or whatever?
Whiskey business.
Yeah.
Really quick, the website, RWBB Coffee.
RWBB Coffee. Sorry,
correct.
RWBB Coffee. Okay. A couple things. Armed Citizens Rules of Engagement with Masad Ayub. It doesn't get any better than Masad Ayub. The guy is a legend. It's happening March 8th and 9th. Sign up today. Here's what one student said, quote, "You all should definitely join this class. I took the class 11 years ago. It forms the backbone of how I look at crime, self-defense, and firearms ownership. Ready to level up your skills? Sign up now at gunownersradio.com. Just click the link for Mastering Self-Defense. So check that out. There still are spaces for the lecture. Don't miss it.
Speaking of self-defense,
Yes.
legal use of self-defense, you need it. We all need it.
On me, I was like, what did
We
I
all
do?
need it.
We all need it.
We all need
I'm going to be there for sure. Are you taking it?
I'll be there.
Gary?
I was going to
Putting it right on the spot.
I was going to ask Rich to get me into the shooting portion of it because all that's left open is the classroom portion of it.
You want both.
I want to do both.
The next intro to modern off-grid comms class is happening January 25th. If you've ever bought a Baofeng radio and still aren't quite sure how to use it, this class is perfect for you. That's one of the things you'll cover. You'll learn the skills, practice the skills, and walk away with a fully programmed Baofeng radio, ready to keep you connected when it matters most. And with recent events like the LA fires, you know how quickly things can go from normal to chaos. Upgrading your communication skills could make all the difference in staying safe and informed during an emergency. Spots are limited, so head to the website now and sign up. This isn't just a Baofeng radio class. This isn't just a ham class. This is a modern off-grid comms class. There is a lot of information here. One of the things that comes with the class is a programmed radio, but that is not the entirety of the class. Our event this month for January, San Diego County Gun Owners, Inauguration Day is almost here. It's actually January 20th, 2025. For an unforgettable Trump inauguration viewing party right here in San Diego County, join us. Come celebrate with like-minded as we watch history unfold together. There will be great company, patriotic energy, and plenty of opportunities to connect with the community. Don't miss this special event. Head to, you want to go to reformcalifornia.org/events to save your spot and get all the details. You can also go to stcgo.org and click on the banner. We have partnered with a couple of different groups. One of them is Reform. That's our event this month. So that's the one and only event that we have going on this month is the Inauguration Day. January 20th, it's in the morning. I think it actually starts at 9 a.m. But please, please, please go and sign up and join us. It's going to be a great time. So, all right. Shall we talk to Sam? All right, everybody's favorite Stump My Nephew. Sam is my nephew, and if you send us a question and we read it on the air, we'll send you a hat or a shirt. It's got to be a gun trivia question. And if you stump my nephew, then you get a super cool special prize. This segment is sponsored by Seal One. Go to seal1.com. That's their website, seal1.com. Seal One makes gun ownership easier and smell better. The live fire class with Massad Ayoob is sold out, but here's your chance to win big. A 4-day MAG 40 class with Massad Ayoob himself. That's both live fire and classroom training, an incredible opportunity.
See, Gary, that's it. That's your end. Buy a lot of Seal One.
You got to buy some Seal One, it looks like.
Well, I'm going to have to get a couple of cases if
Yeah.
I want to get in the class.
Yeah.
Here's how to enter. Go to seal1.com, spend $25 or more, and you're in. It's that simple. Don't wait. Stock up now and secure your chance to train with the best. Seal One's at SHOT Show, by the way. If you're going, stop by booth number 71054. 71054. Say hello to the Seal One gang, and thank you so much, Seal One, for sponsoring this segment.
And it really smells good.
Yeah, right. I use it as a clone. A little aftershave, Speaking of aftershave, Sam, how you doing, bud?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good, man. Good to see you. You doing all right?
Likewise.
Gary's got a question for you. You ready to answer it?
I hope so. You guys
hope
have been
so.
throwing me some tough ones lately, so we'll see.
Here's the
can't tell-
question. This is a tough one.
Yeah, I think this is a tough one, but I don't know. It might. There's some dead giveaways. If I had to put money, I think you're gonna get it. But it's one of those questions where you either know it or you don't. I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to kind of reason your way into it, which you're particularly good at. But anyway, go ahead, Gary. Who's it from and where are they from?
Here's the question. Hal from Delmar asks, Spencer repeating guns were technically advanced, used cartridges, a recent development, and could fire 7 shots in 15 seconds. But the Army didn't want a repeating gun, fearing that the soldiers would fire more often, constantly need fresh ammunition, and overtax the supply system. What elected official changed the Army's mind after firing one for himself?
Hal from Delmar, thanks very much for writing in. Interesting question. And Gary, thanks for reading the question. It's talking about the Spencer repeating rifle and related Spencer carbine, which are lever action firearms, but not like the ones we know of today. The trigger guard itself forms the lever. There isn't a separate lever that's attached to the trigger guard like you and I would expect. But the magazine is also unusual on the Spencer platform in that it's housed inside the stock. You don't have a magazine tube underneath the barrel like you do on a Henry or a Winchester or what have you. You instead have a tubular magazine that's located in the stock. To reload it, you have to open up the compartment in the butt of the gun, and that's how you get at it. Now, the question was what public official counteracted, or I should say countermanded Army ordinances, one could say unwarranted conservatism when it comes to adopting new small arms, and was so motivated by his experience shooting a repeating rifle and was so impressed that he was willing to go over the heads of his own subordinates. That was Abraham Lincoln,
There you go.
U.S. president at the time, 16th president of the United States,
Winner,
who had
winner.
the opportunity to shoot one.
I think just the idea of President Lincoln shooting a Spencer rifle kind of tickles me a little bit. I don't know why.
Here's the long answer. In 1863, President Lincoln test fired a Spencer. His approval led to the purchase of 107,372 Spencer repeating carbines and rifles, of 144,500 made, and the Spencer became the principal repeating gun of the Civil War.
Gary, did you know that? Would you have been able to answer that question?
Yes.
Really? Why? Are you a Civil War buff?
Well, I knew that the Spencer was from Civil War, so the only person that I would have back-ended into it. I wouldn't have known about Lincoln. I would have known the time period of the Spencer.
I think that there's definitely Yeah, I think that's definitely a route to take. I think I thought, you know what, he's probably gonna, if he doesn't know, he's gonna know that way.
I don't think it would have been Buchanan or Johnson. So either one of those two would have been out for me. That would have left Lincoln.
He deduced it. Well, it could have been Grant. Could have been Grant.
Well, Grant was
not
too late.
like
That was
literally
1876. Yeah.
Alicia, did you know that?
No, I'm not even going to try and say I did.
Yeah. That's my nephew,
Absolutely
Gary.
not.
That's my nephew, man. What do you think? My sister's kid
Well, you got that going for you.
on my mom and dad's side. You know what's funny? I'm going to say, I hope this doesn't embarrass you, Sam, but when I sit there and listen, first off, you do an excellent job of lecturing. I mean, every time we bring something up, you add something to it, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever said this before, but as he talks, it is so interesting to me because the words he chooses and the way he structures his sentences, if I close my eyes, it's my dad. But his actual voice and the way it sounds and the way he delivers it, it's his dad. It's my brother-in-law.
Well,
And
if he starts yelling, Michael, have you mowed the lawn? Is that going to give you flashbacks, or is it?
it's so interesting. It's so interesting. Anyway, Sam, I hope that didn't.
That's about the highest compliment I could receive.
Well, they're both great men.
Yeah.
Truly.
Sam, I definitely learned something from your talk about the trigger guard and the loading tube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the Spencer's neat, and it's one of those sort of, I guess you could say, evolutionary dead ends in that it was revolutionary for its time, but the core design didn't really survive to the modern day. Like you look at something like the 1911 for comparison, that same tilting barrel action and some of how like the trigger group operates and things like that. Those have persisted. Those have been taken and tweaked a little bit, but and things like old Henry rifles, the same basic action was changed around a little bit, but persisted largely. But the Spencer, you didn't really see a lot of modernized Spencers. That platform kind of died out.
Any relation between the gun and the shop at the mall?
I'm not aware of any.
All right.
But sorry, one more
thing. That's
thing.
the intellectual level I add to the. All right, let's move on to our next segment. This is
wait.
Oh.
One more thing, briefly. You noted that it seems sort of interesting to imagine a U.S. president firing a prototype military rifle and being so impressed with it. But past presidents were a lot of past presidents were avid sportsmen, avid outdoorsmen, as I'm fond of pointing out. President Theodore Roosevelt hunted with a suppressed Winchester Model 1894, making him more operator than all of us combined.
Well, I don't think it's not so much that he was a president. It's just that Abraham Lincoln, it just kind of tickles me. I have the feeling that he truly enjoyed it. And he's kind of small or tall and gangly, and it just kind of tickles me. And he's one of those guys.
Don't forget, Abe Lincoln was a redneck for his day. He was from the middle of nowhere. He grew up in a log cabin.
I hear you.
Hadn't heard that.
My old man says that he is Abraham Lincoln is the one person in history where the more you learn about him, the more you like him. You know, usually you hear about your heroes or whatever, and you go, I didn't know he had that flaw, or I didn't know he did that in his life. But with Abraham Lincoln, he's the one exception. He's the total opposite. The more you learn about him.
Talk about the right guy at the right time who probably saved the United States.
Amen. All right, let's move on to our next segment. This is our Straight Shooter segment, sponsored by straightshooter.ac. Check them out. If you have a heater or an air conditioner and you own it and you need them to come out, please do. Contact them. straightshooter.ac is their website, 619-922-3937. No bull, just straight shooting on today's hottest gun and political topics. It's time for the Straight Shooter segment. I thought we'd go with something kind of fun on this since we've been talking about some pretty heavy stuff.
I don't know that I like your idea of fun.
What do you mean you don't like my idea of fun?
Well, I'm going to let you roll because maybe you're going to take it a different way.
Well, the first one is this, and I was actually...
Okay, see the fun.
Do we have the video for that?
Yeah.
We do? Okay, let's start with this. So really what it is La Jolla, the prestigious La Jolla here in San Diego. For those who don't know, La Jolla is a lot of rich people live in La Jolla. It's pretty much what it boils down to.
It's me. I'm the one who doesn't know.
It's a very rich neighborhood. It's kind of an old money neighborhood. I don't think it's any longer the richest neighborhood in San Diego, but it's definitely kind of this really rich
It's
neighborhood.
this beautiful, rich beach town.
Beautiful, rich beach town. That pretty much sums it up. There's also a little bit of an attitude about people that live in La Jolla,
And people that don't.
Anyway, they had a really interesting idea lately, so I wanted to talk about it. Go ahead and play.
Did you know that La Jolla is trying to separate itself from San Diego and become its own city? After 6 months of pounding the pavement, volunteers collected enough signatures to take the next step in their push for La Jolla to become its own city. Supporters believe La Jolla isn't getting the attention or funding it deserves from the city of San Diego. They're hoping a new city budget could address long-standing issues like infrastructure and maintenance. For a place that draws in so many tourists, some say it doesn't reflect the vibe of a world-class destination. The process isn't going to be easy. Separating from a city is rare, with the last successful attempt in California happening in the 1800s when Coronado became its own city. Critics argue the split could feel strange and raise questions about how it impacts San Diego's finances, especially given how much revenue La Jolla generates for the city of San Diego. If approved, La Jolla might need to pay San Diego to keep things financially neutral. So what do you guys think? Should this happen? And did you even know that La Jolla wasn't its own city here in San Diego County?
So when I moved here in 1997, I was 21 years old, and I set up my mail and whatever, and I was in Pacific Beach, and I remember asking the mailman, I said, "Hey, do I write Pacific Beach?" And he goes, no, you're in San Diego, kid. Right? San Diego. He said the only ones that can write their city, La Jolla. They actually went and petitioned and got the ability to write La Jolla because they're a bunch of stuck-up snobs. Now, here's why these guys are jerks for doing this. Not every one of them. I'm sure there's some legitimate people that are interested in doing this for legitimate reasons, and they aren't part of the problem. But, if you go to La Jolla right now, it is pothole central. It is, they're right. They don't get any love. All the money's being diverted to different communities. La Jolla, even though they're a huge cash cow, they're paying all the bills in San Diego, or many of the bills in San Diego, and they're not getting any of the benefit because of this anti-rich attitude. Like, oh, well, they're rich. We're going to, divert the money. Now, here's the problem. The folks, the 9 city council members in San Diego, the ones in the past that have said, hey, we're going to ignore La Jolla, we're not going to fill the potholes, and we're, whatever, they were supported by people that live in La Jolla. It's very similar to what I was saying at the top of the show about LA, where you have all these, rich, famous actors who are, oh, hey, check us out and whatever. And, they were electing the wrong people. They're supporting the wrong people. Now they're mad at the results, so they want to leave, Go jump in a lake, man. I hope that it fails miserably. I hope they have to continue to live with the consequences of their own decisions. And I hope it changes their mind. That's my big concern is you're watching, all these people in different cities in LA and LA County, and they're saying, hey, the people that we elected failed us miserably. It's the same thing on a much smaller scale in La Jolla. But my fear is they're not going to significantly change their philosophy. They're just going to find somebody else with the exact same philosophy and elect them and pretend they're going to be competent. So anyway, what are your thoughts, Gary? What do you think about La Jolla seceding from the San Diego Union?
I have a question before you answer.
Sure, go.
Do you live in La Jolla?
I do not.
Oh, that was a good
I
question.
was like,
I should have asked him. Right? Yeah.
the whole time you were talking, I'm thinking, I hope Gary doesn't live in La Jolla.
Well, I'm
Bunch of
I'm one of
attorneys,
the
they're all
signatories.
jerks over there.
I signed the petition. No, I live in Poway, and I don't think that we've got a secession movement yet.
No.
I cannot imagine that the city, because it's not just La Jolla voting to secede. La Jolla has to agree to secede, the citizens of La Jolla, and then the citizens of San Diego have to agree to let La
them
Jolla
go.
secede.
Right.
And so the chances of one, that might be something in the cards. The citizens of La Jolla, 50.1% may vote for that.
Yeah.
But I can just about guarantee you that they're not getting 50.1% with the rest of San Diego.
Yeah.
And so I don't see this going anywhere.
Alicia, what do you think?
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of silly.
It makes me, I'm curious, how did Coronado win? How did they get the vote?
Well, it was
Long ago.
a million years ago. So. Sam, what do you think, man? You have any opinion on that? It's kind of distant for you, but do you have any opinion on it? Yeah.
I got nothing.
You want to go back to Spencer's?
California is a weird man. I don't know what to say.
All right, let's move on to something funny. Saturday Night Live gets a lot of crap. I used to be a huge Saturday Night Live fan. I'll be honest, it's not that I don't like making fun of Trump. I love making fun of presidents, and I think Trump, there's a lot of material there, although I love him very much, and I voted for him. I love him. I don't know him, but I like his administration, whatever. So they stopped being funny. But I thought this was a particularly funny segment. I want to talk about it. So
this is the most important election in American history. Democracy is on the line.
Great. Our next question is for $300,000. And here to ask it is the man himself.
I was Hillary Clinton's vice presidential running mate. At the time, you said it was the most important election in American history and that democracy was on the line. It's been less than 8 years. What's my name?
Hi, it is an honor.
You voted for me to be one heartbeat away from the Oval Office in an election more recent than the release of Zootopia. What's my name?
It's not my fault if he was a more memorable guy like Tim Walz.
This is very much a guy like Tim Walz. Let's see them side by side. Wow. Not only does he look exactly like Tim Walz, his name was also Tim.
Really? His name was Tim?
My name is still Tim. I exist. I'm a senator representing Virginia.
I thought that was funny. I think it's funny because I watch people just lose their mind. I got to tell you, every election's important. I wish more people thought elections were important and got involved and donated and gave their dime and their time. But oh my gosh, the hyperbole from the left, the whole, democracy will end was just, we'll talk about the entire political party just absolutely insisted upon itself. There were a bunch of self-important, just dramatic. I actually have this friend she's an actress or a wannabe actress up in LA. She and I would hang out. She was actually a friend of a friend, and we'd hang out. I'd go up to LA, and we lost touch. Didn't really, didn't keep up on social media or anything. And long story short is I caught up with just her social media recently. And she was completely uninterested knew nothing about politics 15 years ago. Knew nothing about politics. And she's in her 50s by now. And now her entire 6-7 posts a day on Facebook on how horrible and bigoted and Republicans and democracy is at risk and whatever. She has gone way off the deep end, way off the deep end. And she's such an example of a bunch of people at the top, very few people at the top said, hey, we got to figure out how to make people vote for a horrible candidate. So therefore, they came up with this dramatic line about democracy and tyranny, whatever. And none of it rings true, right? Now you have those, a lot of the same people at the top are now meeting with Trump and working with Trump, and hell, some of them are on Trump's short list as far as being endorsed. And I thought this was a hilarious clip that kind of illustrates that.
There's a clip that I just saw was Donald Trump and Barack Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And they're sitting there chuckling it up with each other. And, and a lot of people are commenting on, oh, this is the guy that's going to destroy democracy. And the most important or funniest clip that I saw was when they started talking and chuckling it up. Harris looked over her shoulder with palpable disgust at Obama laughing with Donald Trump in the back row.
Right.
Listen, one of the things we really try to do is we try to pull the curtain back. I don't want to just say a bunch of extreme stuff and hope you click on it because you agree or whatever. We want to pull the curtain back and show you, hey, you know what? Some of the stuff that they're saying isn't true. You're being manipulated, and we don't want to do that in a. The other side of that is kind of the conspiracy theory manipulation. We're not doing that either. We just want to pull the curtain back and show you, hey, you know what? It's just a little, worm of a guy pulling some levers and, smoke and mirrors or whatever. Like, it's not real, it's not real. And I thought that this was an interesting choice by Saturday Night Live.
Well, it's not a conspiracy theory. You are being manipulated.
Sure.
Everything that's online, everything that comes out of the legacy media and the non-legacy media is done to influence you in some fashion. And they'll use truths, half-truths, and false truths in order to influence you to their position.
The main guy in that skit was a guy named John Mulvaney. Have you heard of him?
Yes.
He's a comedian. That humor felt very much like him. So I think, him bringing that he was kind of an outsider. He used to be on Saturday Night Live. Now he's kind of an outsider coming back. And him writing that, basically critiquing or criticizing SNL for what they did, I thought was really interesting. So, Sam, what do you think? You got anything on this one? Oh, can't hear you, bud.
Sorry about that. My bad. No, I think you guys really hit the nail on the head. Happy to see Virginia being represented, I guess, in popular culture. I don't know. Yeah, Tim Kaine's one of ours.
You're 25, right?
What's that?
You're 25 years old?
Yes.
So do you find that people around you who are the same age, or, when you just graduated college, do you find that they're, do you agree that, this generation, it's kind of their, it's their first couple of elections, this one and the last one, or, they haven't voted in a whole lot of elections. This is their first taste of politics, and they're getting like this extreme, hyperbole, like I said, this extreme taste of politics. Have you seen that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
It reminds me of something I said on this show a couple of months ago, I think in November, actually, right after the election. It's actually a leftist critique, but I think it's pretty apt. It's, if one election is all that, if we're perpetually one election away from fascism, then we aren't one election away from fascism.
I think it's probably a good point. All right, let's end on that. Anybody else? Got anything else? No?
I've said enough.
Okay, good. Next week, we got a whole lot of other cool stuff. Like I said, in the meantime, like and share. Go to gunownersradio.com. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. Share the clips. Get your friends involved and help spread the word. We have a very real thing that we're trying to accomplish here, and that's to preserve and restore your Second Amendment rights. So please help us out. And thank you guys for watching and listening. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you.
And thank you, Gary Gibson.
You are welcome.
Attorney extraordinaire. Truly, 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 thank you for all that you do, my friend.
Thank you, Gary.
And Rich, awesome job. See you guys next week.